because I kind of find it funny sometimes. A couple of work groups I was at with ODE, one was in November. So it was your favorite side dish for Thanksgiving. Then we had one in December, and it was your favorite Christmas movie. So obviously it leads into, into conversations for a while about those things. So I said, well, I don't know how people feel about icebreakers. So I kind of thought, well, maybe that would be interesting to maybe share in chat or unmute and share kind of your thoughts on icebreakers, and if that kind of starts the meeting off on a comfortable note, informal note, or if it's sort of like, well, I'm not a big fan of those, I would rather the meeting be 10 minutes shorter as opposed to an icebreaker. So I don't know. I was kind of getting some of your thoughts. And if you guys do professional development or staff meetings, how do you start your meetings off?
We always, instead of doing our icebreakers, something positive, if it's a weekly meeting or whatever, something positive for the week or the day, or, to just try to start the meeting out on a positive note. That's what we always do. So my positive is I'm here.
Hey, we're glad.
I'm still kicking. So for today, because it's kind of rough this week. Got a lot of positives coming in right now. Not the right kind of positives either.
Yes. But
we have lots of positives going on, but not the ones we want. So
hey buddy. Hey, yeah. I'm a get after it guy. So we start right off.
Yeah, I would have guessed that. I probably would have guessed that, Ron.
I guess, I've been working with Dr. Mel Riddle for too long, and working with his instructional frameworks, and he talks about starting the class with a starter or a do now. And so, not to waste any amount of time, but having that thing that they need to think about prior to the lesson, coming up. So when I'm thinking about meetings and things like that, I am kind of in that mode. What is it that's going to get participants thinking about, what's coming up, kind of warming up their thinking, somewhat. So that's how I've been approaching it.
Okay. Actually, Scott and I are doing, as a plug for our leadership symposium on February the 2nd. So, and something just popped into my head, which might be a kind of a good icebreaker that would be educational related. So as you guys were talking, it's actually giving me some ideas, because other networks, sometimes I'm with Susan Seamer. I don't think she's going to be on here today. She's usually the creative one when we are working together. So I leave that up to her. So I wasn't that kind of person in terms of coming up with something nifty and funny and with a hook to it.
I was depending on Buddy being that person, since, I was working with Jill Sheridan and she was always that person for me. And then Buddy comes in and he just dropped the ball.
Yeah. Now, Scott sometimes he had the music set up to ease into and I think personally, music kind of sets a nice, calm mood to start a meeting as well. Okay, Dana's got a kindergartner under the table. She'll be right back. So there you go. That's, if your day has started without a kindergartner under the table, it may have started better than Dana's today. Okay. Any other thoughts? Any other input or things that you do? You kind of joined a little late, Susan Larson. We didn't have an icebreaker per se, so we wanted to get people's input on what they thought about icebreakers or things that they came up with when they would start meetings.
Oh, I love them. So that, but I do agree with Ron where he said sometimes 20 minutes can be introductions. If they're not really pertinent to the content, then why do we do them, I guess? I agree.
Okay.
If you want any ideas, buddy, I'm sure I can drum something up for you. I think I have an icebreaker book over here on the shelf.
Ah, see, there you go. There you go. I think I got something in mind, like I said, so maybe sign up and join the Leadership Symposium on February 2nd, and I'll keep you hanging there as to the idea I just had for an icebreaker. Okay, it's about 10 after, so I'm guessing those folks that were able to join at 10 are here. So I will, you're going to share your screen, Scott.
Sure.
And we are, you'll see these slides. I did the PowerPoint slides, and you know how when people take black and white pictures, they kind of look cool nowadays. So I kind of thought, well, maybe I'll take that spin on it for these PowerPoint slides. So it's going to be, well, we'll see kind of if that's a negative or a positive, or if it really doesn't matter, because we don't have that many slides. So I went with less is more. So there's not going to be a lot of visual effects on these PowerPoint slides today, if that's what you were hinging a successful PD or a successful network today. But no, you guys, most of you know us by now. Scott and I, there are our emails are listed there in case you need us. And this is the PBIS Leader Network. This is the second one. We're going to have 3 this year. I think our next one will be sometime in April, beginning of April, if I'm not mistaken.
We're ready. Well, sorry.
That's okay, because it would, Jill Sheridan is going to join us this morning. We just didn't know exactly when. So is she here yet?
I have not. No, I don't think so.
Okay, but that's all right. We got a backup plan.
Okay, so one of the things that we are going to be talking about is the state is starting to push, or at least the ODE is starting to push to have districts start doing a district TFI. It's technically called the District Systems Fidelity Inventory. You'll hear them refer to it as the Dsfi, and it's different from the TFI. And I'm going to stop sharing for a second because I'm going to pull up the
and there is a copy of this in your resources of both fidelity inventories.
Okay, so let me go back to sharing. So and I apologize for scrolling, but what the Dsfi is going to do is really put the emphasis on systems. It's more where the TFI is looking at how well you're implementing specifically PBIS. What the Dsfi does is looks at how well your system operates. And there are 9 different parts to, once I get through here, into that. And those include leadership teaming, stakeholder engagement, resource alignment, funding and allocation, policy and system support, workforce capacity, professional development, coaching, and technical assistance, and evaluation. And then the last one is local implementation demonstrations. Now, when you look at this, if you look at a tiered fidelity inventory, what you have are 15 different measures, and you need that 70% or 21 of those points to get an award. With the Dsfi, it's a little bit more elaborate. There are actually 56 different areas that they look into, and excuse me while I scroll a little bit, starting with your leadership authority, and it really just gets into a lot of the breakdown of your district and how it is sustaining PBIS in your district. Whether leadership authority, and the whole first part is basically on the team leadership, operating procedures, action planning. Basically what it's looking at is giving you an idea. And remember, this is done by individual districts. So if you have all of your buildings have PBIS and you have a district team that oversees that, then it might help you to do a Dsfi just as a preliminary to see where you are as far as what the standards are. And these come out of, basically these are what the University of Missouri and the National PBIS authorities. I don't know how you describe it, but it's what they feel need to be done in order for this to be sustained. And truly, this is what this Dsfi is that, remember that you don't want all the responsibility to fall on one person or one small group of people. So if you have something within your system that that will help to maintain it. It will help to guarantee that this will go on, as long as the district exists, really. So then the section 2 gets into stakeholders, and it goes into a real long definition of who are your stakeholders and what is their role within your system, resources alignment, funding, allocation is the next section. Then we get into, and I'll slow down on the scrolling so you can look at what some of the different categories are. Section 4, policy and systems support. How are you supporting this whole, your PBIS team, your PBIS initiatives as you go through, and you see the discipline guides, discipline policy review. How are you looking at what your discipline policy is? How are you transitioning either new students or students going from one building to another, and that. Then it gets into workforce capacity and actually has, so that, are you hiring people who are trained in PBIS? And remember that higher ed is when new teachers coming out of colleges should have had a semester of PBIS training as they went through their schooling. So, are you hiring people who have a background in PBIS? Do you have job descriptions that include in it that they are implementing PBIS? And then is that part of the evaluation as you go through?
Hey, Scott, can I ask a question about that?
Sure.
Do we know, are the colleges doing that? I mean, what is the, like Muskingum and OU, what is is that happening?
I think that's a good question. And I can't answer that completely. I know that there are some schools that are, I don't know that it is being done, across the board.
Okay.
I know that at least in Ohio, and I will try to find that out though, because that's one of the questions that I had at one of the network meetings, but I wasn't able to ask it. So next time I get together with the state network, I will ask and see what we know about that.
Okay, thank
But
you.
that's a very good question. So section 6 gets into professional development and what your plan is as a district for training, your staff, where you're getting materials, what are you doing as far as making sure that they are updated, that kind of stuff. Going on to section 7, coaching and technical assistance. How are you supporting those teachers and staff members? What kind of materials do you have? What are you doing as far as keeping you up to date on what is the latest coming out of the state or even there are some exemplar states. We have Missouri, we have Oregon, we have Florida. Michigan has a very good system of PBIS, and those are places that you can get a lot of updates. Gets into coaching, the implementation process. Again, how are you putting in tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and also, do you have a coaching network, within your district or even outside of the district? Going on to section 8, it gets into the evaluation. How are you evaluating how well PBIS is working? How are you evaluating what is going on within your district? Making sure that are you doing TFIs? Are you doing the different surveys that can give you that information? And here's I guess what I want to say is that I'm not sure there's a lot of schools, districts within our state that could, score very high on this. But what this does do is it gives you a framework, just kind of like the TFI. It lets you know where you're at and gives you some suggestions on what you can do to improve that so that your system is strong and that your system can continue to grow with the implementation of PBIS. And then the last section gets into the local implementation demonstrations. How are you showing what you know, basically? Do you have a model school that you can use to teach other schools within your system? This obviously is designed for a large school system that has several schools in it. It's not as much. I know many of our districts only have a few buildings. So if you have one building that is doing exceptional, then do you have that building modeling what they're doing to the other people, and then how are you scaling up? So really the key point to the difference between the TFI and the DSFI is that where the TFI is showing you how well you've implemented the different tiers of PBIS, what the DSFI is doing is really focusing on your system and how well you have, or what you have in place as far as a system for continuing to maintain, implementing and maintaining PBIS. Any questions on that? And Jill, I see that you've joined us. If you have any thing you would like to add, I appreciate it.
Hi, Scott. Hi, buddy. Hello, everyone else. I miss this group. Oh my goodness. Thanks for adding me back in here for a few minutes anyway. I would just like to add, I replied back to Anne privately on this. Actually, that is something that working with higher ed is something that I have had on my vision to do over the next year and a half that this role is still in present. I think that it would be very beneficial for us to host a roundtable with all of our higher ed partners in Southeastern Ohio, because we as school districts hire from those that are graduating most likely within our region. And to find who is teaching those behavior classes, what courses do they offer, and then find out what materials are they using, because it's a requirement for them to instruct in PBIS, but those materials don't have to be Ohio approved PBIS network materials. And so I think if we have a better understanding as districts who are employing what that foundational knowledge is for students that are now going to be our future for the next 30, well, is it 40 years now of education? So.
And for those of you, I think probably all of you are familiar with Jill, but maybe not what her capacity is now. She works as the regional field coordinator for our region. Actually includes 4 different SSTs and I don't know how many ESCs are involved in that. And 11. So
11.
She is responsible for basically coordinating the trainings and doing a lot of the promoting PBIS throughout our quad. I don't even know, not even a quad. Is it a quad, Jill?
It's a region made up of 4 quads. Made up of, it's a quad. Scott, you got me. It's a quad made up of 4 regions. Yes, thank you.
Yeah. And if she's an incredible resource for us, because she's kind of up to date on all the new stuff coming out even before we get it. And we're both, Buddy and I are part of the Ohio network. But Jill seems to always have her ear to the ground and can anticipate things before we even know they're coming. So we really appreciate the work she does, which also leads me into, this is such a great transition. See how I did this?
Hey, hold on real quick though. Rose
Okay.
Dame just put it in the chat that she talked to a student from Marietta College and that PBIS is covered in one of their classroom management courses.
Awesome. Yay. That's great to hear.
Yes, it
Right.
is. And I knew she was, she's just finishing up down there, so I thought she'd be a good resource to ask. So I just put that out there to her. So it's good to hear.
Thank you, Rose.
Hey, I'm getting ideas down for the April meeting, the next leadership meeting, because I had jotted down if there were college representatives and maybe student reps that could join us and share their experiences and how they got things set up. Maybe we can put that on our agenda for April.
That's a great idea. That's a great idea. Okay, so now we're going to transition into Jill's portion of the network meeting, which is the telling us a little bit about how New Philadelphia has implemented PBIS and they're doing a lot of good things there. And Jill will give you a little bit more of the background and what their journey was like. So take it away, Jill.
Okay. Thank you, Scott. Do I have the ability to share screen or?
Hold on. You will. You do now.
All right. Thank you. I'll wait a few minutes here before I start sharing. Another just further explanation is that I still work in the SST capacity for 70 days a year. And so I am still assigned a couple districts for school improvement purposes. And New Philadelphia City Schools is one of the districts that I have worked with for 3-4 years now as a school improvement consultant. So they have the benefit of also having my background and knowledge with PBIS and PBIS systems. They are very similar to the situations that all of you are in. For instance, Scott and Buddy asked if I could have one of the principals or a few of the principals join us to share out. Guess what they're doing, right? They're covering classes, they're managing subs, they are still in survival mode. Here we are in January. And it's even more explosive right now in their need to cover classes. So anything we talk about today, you're more than willing to reach out to any of them about the level that they're at with the TFI and the resources I'm going to share with you. So with that being said, another way that they are very similar is that we started working through establishing the PBIS framework as a New Philadelphia team in each building in the school year of 1920. We were working through the modules, we were establishing each one of the systems and creating that with their matrix along the way. And then March of 1920 happened and all that work stopped, right? Does that sound familiar to many of you? Yep, absolutely. And so last year was, again, another hot mess as we work through 2021, but catapulted on top of the pandemic. If you're not familiar with New Philly, in the summer of 20, they also reconfigured all of their elementary schools. So they had now where we had teams in place, they got all mixed up in that move in their elementary school system. So we used to have our strongest PBIS teams were at the elementary in New Philly. But now what happened over time is the consistent teams are at our middle school and high school. And they are able to make further progress. Again, that example that the longer you have a team together, 3 to 5 years, right? It allows for that foundation to happen and grow over time. So those were some of the barriers. And then, nope, I got to add the third barrier there. New Philly has a very limited contract language around how much planning time is allowed within their teacher workday. So here we are to start off 21-22 with a need to reboot the entire PBIS and where are we at this process. We have mixed up teams. The foundation isn't there. At one building at York Elementary, in that shuffle, there were no teachers at York Elementary who had been on a previous team. So we're starting off fresh with an entire elementary building and a principal too, a brand new principal. So we knew that we were up against it because we needed to find out where each team was at this point in rebooting their system, but we didn't have time available for professional development. We're very limited to the time before school starts, which is 30 minutes in their contract language. So we started brainstorming about the best way that we could actually do the TFI this fall. And so I'm going to share with you how I've pulled together resources, literally Okay, I didn't make this stuff up all myself, but I have it in the folder so that you can steal everything that we share forward. Okay, I see Dana grinning, right, Dana? That's what we do in education. We just keep borrowing each other's items. So the foundation of this language and process that I use, let me open up. I'm going to share my screen now. Can you see my screen with the PBIS attached on it? Okay. My green window didn't go around it, so I got nervous. Okay, so this is a document that you have in your resource agenda that Scott and Buddy have shared with you. So I'm giving credit where credit is due. This is the Midwest PBIS Network workbook, okay? So this is the entire implementation workbook that you have access to that we will come back to. But here's where this first part of the TFI, see this page right here? We sent this out. I readdressed it, added some directions at the top, and sent this document of the TFI with very detailed descriptions of each one of the areas for possible scoring to each one of the PBIS team members in all 7 of the buildings. So they have 7 buildings. And individually then, each team member took the time individually, not as a team. This is not best practice. Tim Lewis would probably choke us all out right now. The fact that, oh, that wouldn't be very positive, would it, buddy? Sure, Tim Lewis wouldn't do that. But he would want us to do this together as a team. But we then use the Google form. This is gonna, okay, hold on. I need to open the right Google form. Here it is. So this is what the Google form looked like that I put together based on that workbook TFI. So in those directions, we were asking individuals to sit down, pull up their score Google form, and then pull up the TFI rubric and just score themselves as a team, as a building, individually. That was a simple process. They did that very painlessly. And then we came back together and had that 30 minutes where that part of the TFI scoring and initial thought was already done. From each one of those, I then took that Excel document, and I'm sharing with you now a master Excel that I pulled the data into from those. I did not give you access to this because this is new Phillies data. And this is the tab that I've opened up from the middle school. So we went through and scored the percentage based on that Google input form. I simply went to the responses, right, in the Excel document, and I could see what percentage of those individuals gave a 2, what percentage gave a 1. And I put the percentage of the responses here in this part. So when we met as a team, they had a printout of column A, B, C, and D. Through discussion in 30 minutes, we could very quickly say, what's the team score for 1.1? Obvious, we're at a 2. We did not debate unless we were at a 50-50. If we were a 50-50 or sometimes 60-40, we would stop and debate. Because what we were looking for here is not let's fix it all. We're looking for one next action step that we want to take as a team. So that reboot, man, we could work on it all, right? Like all of these areas are important to the foundation of the PBIS process. But based on this conversation in 30 minutes, we were able to come up with the action step that they want to work on is database decision-making. That's the areas in 30 minutes. And in all 7 buildings, we were able to have that conversation very quickly. So from that, it brought us back to the workbook. I know I have that open. Yep, there it is. So that brings you back to the workbook. I love this workbook as a resource because what does it mean to have database decision making? After the TFI part at the top, this workbook is broken down into activities, homework. It takes each one of those components and then breaks it down into an assignment. So I'm going to pull down to so let's say I can tell you that York Elementary, they're deer in the headlights, right? They don't even have a team. So they're saying to me, we need to start at 1.1 and 1.2. What's our team and what's our team operations? Jill, where do we get started with this? We have no time, built in, and the time that we do have is very, very limited. So this workbook takes you specifically to, here's an activity that you would do to establish and help break it down to activity 1 that would support building teams, activity 2, aligning the teams to team structures that we already have, activity 3, team composition, activity 4, creating their agenda and structures, activity 5, their working agreements and their norms. So if the action step, I'm going to go back to York. You can see we just stopped talking, right? They had to develop a team. So we took those action steps and placed them out. They're going to now, for the remainder of this school year, because the reality is we're mid-January, right? We already have calendars filling up in February. They're going to do those activities on a weekly basis to build that strong team. And then when they get those activities done, they'll come back to that TFI and select another action step. What's our next process? They'll go to the workbook again and work through those activities to establish that part of the system. So they will toggle back and forth between the workbook and their action plan from this December is when we did this TFI score. And I invite you to please use these resources that are available to you. If you need to reboot at any point and you are limited on time to get that done with teams, that you could use that Google form make a copy and recreate it, and then use this workbook to help your buildings chunk that work. It's too overwhelming right now. And maybe they can only get one activity done. You know, if they have BLT time, they have to talk about academics and PBIS, and working through that together might take them a month to do one activity. So with that, let's open it up for questions or further discussions, or I'm also very interested. I'm going to stop sharing if I can find it. I'm also very interested to hear, how have you managed to do TFIs and create action so that I can share this with the rest of Southeastern Ohio?
Maybe Sharon, this is Justin from St. C High School. How are you?
I'm wonderful, and it's good to
Good.
see you, Justin. How are you rebooting and moving on with
Well,
PBIS?
Just speaking of rebooting and being busy and everything that's going on, I hopped on here because I've had like people coming in and out of my office this entire time. So I apologize for that. And I've been looking over like what you've been sharing in the Excel spreadsheets and these documents. And I am looking, we've never done a full TFI. And it's something that we've talked about every year. Like, we need to sit down and go through this. But, you know, when you look at the Fidelity Inventory, like you said, it's a lot, to the point where you're not even sure where to start. So I appreciate you sharing that info with us. However, with people coming in and out of here with different low-level emergencies, I missed where we can get that stuff from you. Is that shared somewhere or accessible to us somewhere that I must have missed?
It's in the agenda. Do you have the
Okay.
agenda from the link?
Is the link in the chat over here somewhere?
Buddy and Scott?
We could put it in there. The email that was sent with the Zoom link, if you scroll down, there should be another link that goes to a resources folder.
All
And
right, so
Jill added.
for me to sit down and kind of review this stuff with my PBIS team, I just need to go back to the Zoom link email and should be able to find all that stuff there.
Yeah, you just got to,
Okay.
I think, scroll down a little bit. It was, and then
Okay.
Scott just put the link in the
Okay.
chat too.
I didn't
then-
see the workbook though. I was looking for the workbook you were referring to, Jill.
There are 3 resources inside that folder. So I created a folder at the top of Buddy and Scott's agenda. And there are 3 resources, and the very bottom one says copy of PBIS Tier 1 Team Training TFI Workbook.
Okay.
And does anybody else not see that?
No, I
Oh,
saw.
cool.
You just have to double click on your folder for those 3 resources to pop up.
Okay.
Okay. Also, Jill.
Yes,
the
Ron.
The copy of the York Elementary TFI score input. If you click on that, it just says we cannot accept any responses. There's nothing there. Doesn't
Oh,
open.
okay.
It doesn't open. So.
Okay. So the Google form you can't access. Is that what you're telling me, Ron?
Right. It says no. It says the form York Elementary TFI score input Google form is no longer accepting responses. Try
Okay.
contacting the owner of the form.
So
I just reset that to accepting responses. So, and that is a copy. So you're not going to mess up York's TFI score input. So refresh your screen and see.
Got it. Thank you.
It's fixed now. Yep.
Perfect.
And Jill,
So you
and
can
maybe,
make it. Go ahead, Justin.
and maybe you covered this, and again, maybe I just missed it as you were talking. With this workbook and what you're trying to do with New Philly, their hope is to have this process completed in like what amount of time? What's kind of their goal at New Philly to get the TFI done? A year, 2 years, a year and a half? What's their thoughts?
Well, by law, right, we're working through we should have tier 1 implementation in place by
Yes.
the end of this school year. So that is the ultimate goal. Now, keep in mind, Justin, that when we talk, there's no place in that in law. When we say implementing, you could be implementing in one place, the cafeteria, being respectful in the cafeteria. We're implementing that to start.
Yeah.
Okay. We're not talking about, there's no one from the legislature or ODE going to come in and say, do you have 70% on your TFI? That's not what implementing means. You're chunking the work apart, and are you doing your best due diligence at the state you're in? I can tell you the middle school at New Philly, probably ready to start awards. If I could convince them to apply for an award process this spring, they would probably get the bronze award. York Elementary, we're going to take 3 years to get there.
Yeah.
And all the buildings are going to be all over the place. Just continuing to make it a doable activity rather than overwhelming. And this workbook can really help break that down for very, very busy principals, right? When they're just like, what do I do with all 15 of these and where do we start?
Okay. All right. Thanks, Jill.
Hey, Justin, here's something you probably don't know.
I don't know a lot, actually, so I'm ready.
No. You probably don't know that in the transition this fall, I was assigned to St. C as a consultant.
Really?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
And
Oh, happy to have you.
but St. C is independent, and so I don't come there and I only communicate with Christina. So
Okay.
Point being, Justin, if you need additional help, Jill Sheridan's here to get that for you.
I did not know that. Well, I'll talk to Christina about that and see kind of what you guys have talked about. And that's good to know. I didn't realize that. So I appreciate you telling me.
But, my heart belongs here in Southeastern Ohio, and Ron and I see Amber on here as well, and Buddy and Scott. And we really do work as a team to help absolutely any of our districts. You guys are our neighbors, right? Like, that's just what we do. So any way that I can support or talk with you one-on-one, I'm happy to do that. And so are the New Philly principals as well, too.
Thanks, Jill.
You're welcome, Justin.
Is anybody having any issues with getting to those materials? One thing I will suggest is that even though those are copies, I would make my own copy anyway, and put it into a folder that you can find. Just because those, you want to have something clean that you can customize to your needs. So.
Well, and I know this may have been something that Jill asked a couple minutes ago. Were there others on the call or on the meeting here? Have they completed the building, the tiered fidelity inventory? Did they do that just the one time? Just to get an assessment of where they are, or do we have folks that would want to share that, or have an implementation to the point where you're doing it annually or even a couple times a year or something like that? So I'm kind of anxious to see, because I think once you go through it one time, then your knowledge on how to make it a better process the next time, we could all learn from your experiences.
Buddy. Ron and I are going tomorrow to Cross Creek Elementary in Indian Creek, actually, to do a TFI and just kind of work through. They just kind of want to see, I think, where they're at, if they're ready for tier 2. So we're gonna, try this tomorrow and see how it goes. So we'll have maybe some more information to share at our next meeting.
Okay. No, thanks. And because we've presented this. I know Jill did an excellent job explaining new Philly's process, and Scott and I have put the TFI in almost every resource, probably be it network or train the trainer training, that we include the TFI with that. But if some people are new or even new to this network, then they might be curious as to what it is, what the purpose of it is for, and going forward, how does that impact some of the things they're doing? And so Jill had mentioned that the way that the inventory is set up, similar to a rubric with the point system, that's pretty much identical to when you go to apply for a PBIS recognition award. It correlates to tier 1, correlates to bronze, and then the tier 2 part of the TFI would correlate to silver recognition, and then the tier 3 will correlate to gold recognition. And then it was just weird. I know Scott and Jill probably had seen an email this morning where it looks like there are certain grants that might be coming along that are asking for tier fidelity inventory data as part of a grant application process. I just want to share those things.
I wanted to also, the TFI can be used as a tool, and Kristen, I hope you don't mind, but I'm going to call you out on this. I worked with Kristen. She's at Claymont Elementary, and we went in and I sat down with her and started going through her TFI. She already had done it. I mean, she knew. So how did you use that, Kristen, to kind of develop PBIS at the elementary school?
I really used it kind of as a guideline. I did use that workbook that was brought up earlier and went through that kind of as a springboard as we went into our meetings. And I also used that fidelity inventory. As I went through kind of piece by piece, I took what we were already doing and modified it to kind of sort of fit. Some of the things we were pleasantly surprised to find out we were already doing as a matter of finding the evidence for it. And some of the things we were already doing, we found when we went through that inventory that we could make even better. I found by spending a lot of time on the PBIS website, there were resources and links and examples that kind of helped me see what other places were doing. And when I saw other places were doing that, kind of sort of allowed me to modify it and make it my own. Our middle school is doing a fantastic job in our district as well. And so I did some speaking with her as well, which kind of helped me to, it helped me to make decisions for our district, or for our building, excuse me. One of the, I think the most helpful things in this process to get our building moving in the right direction was to have a solid way to collect our data. And once we saw the data coming in and we saw where our weak points were in our building, we saw what we need to improve on. Looking at the information in an orderly fashion, it was easier to pick apart. What are we going to do about this? How are we going to incentivize this? So we use that Google form that I shared with you, Scott. That is such a helpful tool for us in our building. It really distributes the information in a way that is easily read, and we can very quickly see the times of years, the dates, the locations, the specific grade levels, even to the classroom, the kiddos that we are really struggling with. And when we can look at that information and target it so easily, it makes it a lot easier for us to figure out what we're going to do about it and how we're going to manage that in our building. So for us, really getting that into place was the foundation for us to move forward.
Yeah, and really, as we started going through it, I was very impressed with how well they had implemented and their data and how they were making their decisions. So it was also, based on that data. So anyway, that was, I could tell as we went through it, because I would say, well, what about this? And she immediately had the evidence, she had everything in place, and you could tell that she was very familiar with that TFI. And the same with, Kristen mentioned the Claymont Middle School. They were the same way. They're very, they know that TFI as a guiding document in helping to put in or implement PBIS in their buildings. Two exemplars.
Thank you, Scott.
Anything else? Any other questions or any other things that you are doing as a building or district that you feel is working that would be valuable to the people in this network meeting?
Are you asking me?
Not necessarily you, but if you have something, then yes, I am.
I think that something that we are doing is we do have, I've got a Google folder going in our building, and I put all things of value in that folder. And I make it a point whenever we have our meetings to go over that information, make them aware that it's there, resources for them. I'm a third grade teacher. I'm not an administrator. I have my license, but I'm not in that role. And speaking on behalf of all teachers everywhere, we're so extremely overwhelmed with what it is to be a teacher, in pandemic time, just like everybody is being an administrator as well. So I think to have the information easily accessible for the teachers and have the resources easily accessible for the teachers is going to improve your buy-in drastically. The faster and easier, the least path of resistance the teachers can get to it, the odds of them following through and helping and even being innovators on it is going to improve. So one of the things, like I said, we have that folder available. I'm finding, as I find resources, as we create resources, I have it in an easily accessible place. And that makes it easy for the teachers to find at any point in time. And as we go through the school year as well, I'm always blasting them with a quick survey, a quick Google survey, and that survey can get a snapshot of where they're at with the process. What do they think is happening? What are they seeing that I'm not seeing or that our administrator in our building is not seeing that we need to work on or improve on? What are you uncertain about? How can I help you? What questions can I clear up at our next meeting? And just that quick survey really helps bring in input, because we are overwhelmed with meetings, and subs are obviously a problem, which makes it even harder to have our meetings that we need to have the discussions that are really valuable to this process. So those quick surveys have been an excellent tool. And again, I am always putting everything that I collect into that shared file, including our end of 9 weeks data as well. I can share my screen, Scott, if you give me the capability. I can show you what that data looks like, and I'd be happy to share that.
Sure, just let me have 1 second to. Okay, you should be able to. While she's doing it, I also want to say that she's doing a lot of work, but she also has the support of her principal, Richard Page, who is on the meeting, who has given her a lot of backing, so that you could tell they work very well together on this team.
Yes. So I have a shared file in our Claymont Elementary files here. If you see, I've got things broken up, but I'm always changing it. I'm always changing things as I go, but I try to keep things easily accessible. So I have resources in teaching resources available, including some example lesson plans. We have our slideshows in here that we work on if we need to do any kind of restorative practices and teaching. And it's there, it's easy to find. The quarterly reports are in here. So 21, 22, second 9 weeks. So just at our most recent staff meeting, we went over this information. So you can, at any point in time, you can easily see for the second 9 weeks where we are at. We are breaking down specifically the skills that we are seeing come in the most often that we need to work on. Throughout the school year, our theme is we've got a responsibility issue that we are working on. We can easily come in, we can find our location of where we are seeing the highest level of incidents, which you can see is in the classroom, and the specific minor skill that we're working on. So that's really helpful for us to see as well. Even as our timeline goes on with our dates, you can see if we can kind of sort of see our anomalies here in the data, what's happening here, how can we kind of sort of go ahead and head this off coming into the third 9 weeks when we see these incidents come in. Here, those came after, 10, 28, and 11/1 are my 2 dates here. So what happened there? Halloween, so we can kind of sort of go in here and look at our dates, look at what's happening. When are we having behavior issues on the rise? And that makes it helpful for us as we head into the next 9 weeks. We kind of make a game plan. How can we do things better the next 9 weeks? Because we are relatively new in the process. So I am trying to keep that in mind as we go through this. How can we learn? How can we do better? Anyway, I think having things in one location, making it easy for the staff to access, speaking on behalf of all teachers everywhere, I think that it'll be a little bit less overwhelming for the teachers, because one thing that's always happening in education that never seems to stop is there's always something new. And I think conversations I've heard in the last couple of years with this is, well, this is going to come up and it's going to go away just like everything else does, right? There's always a new thing. There's ebbs and flows in education, and people think something's going to come and it's going to go away and they don't have to worry about it. Well, as we know, this is not going away, and it shouldn't go away. It's valuable to the academics and the social emotional development of all of our students. So it shouldn't be going anywhere either. So I think really getting that buy-in by making this an easier process for the teachers will be helpful. And for me, organization has seemed to really help with that in our building. There you got a whole speech out of me, Scott.
Thank you very much. So
I was just gonna add, and that's all. Thanks, Kristen, for sharing, and Justin. And I know, we've had several of you guys share some of your practices over the last couple years here. I know Dana has shared some things at Union Local as well. And I love having you guys. And I know you are in principal meetings with other principals, be it in your county, in your region, or you're friends with fellow teachers, fellow administrators. And, there are a wide variety. Region 12 has over 40 districts that we try to support, from independent all the way to intensive. And when it comes to PBIS, the implementation is really all over the place. Jill had just shared there's a building starting over again, basically. And then we have places that are fully implemented, tier 1, 2, 3 right now. And everyone in the middle, if word would get out, if you guys are having communication or contacts with those folks that maybe that they're not to the level of implementation that your building might be, or they're kind of like, yeah, that PBIS stuff, I really don't have time for it right now. Or we're kind of, we got some stuff going on. We got posters up, we're doing awards, and that's part, right? But you guys all get that that's not the main focus of the framework. maybe put a bug in her ear and say, well, hey, this is kind of an informal network that we have where people are sharing ideas and kind of get together. I know back when I was principal, some of the best information I got was when I was sitting around with other principals in a meeting and understanding and identifying with some of the things that they were going through. I was also going through and trying to come up with ways to get through the barriers and make the day easier and things like that. So just if that happens, then kind of share, say, hey, it's a pretty good network that we have. And then that way word kind of gets out. And I think that would be, and it's all for, and like Kristen said, it's, we want to shape students. We want to shape student behavior. We want to create better people for the society, once they head out to higher ed or the workforce or whatever. And there's videos that kind of relate to that in our train the trainer sessions. But I mean, a lot of ideas come from these networks.
Yeah, and I want to reiterate that. I think that is, you guys are some of the greatest resources we have. You should be working with each other. That's one of the reasons we have the network, is because the truth is Southeast Ohio is different than anywhere else in the state. We have unique student body, we have unique culture, and you guys share all that. And so, if you're facing an issue at your school, probably somebody else within this region is facing that same issue. And so, this is a chance to say, okay, well, this really worked for us, or we're really struggling with this, and getting suggestions and offering those resources. Kristen sharing her Google Docs and her file, and Jill, thank you so much for sharing your the surveys and that these are things that, like I will say, Jill did a lot of work on that, putting together that Google form for the surveys and stuff. And why reinvent the wheel? Somebody has done the work. Take advantage of that. Let's and if you have something, or somebody's doing something that you think would be valuable to the rest of the network, please share that with us.
I've got one question, Scott, if you don't mind. So since we're talking about networking and looking for advice and whatnot, one of the things that Saints, we implement tier 1 pretty well, tier 3 pretty well, tier 2 has always been kind of our weak area. And so one of the things I'm trying to find, or have been trying to find over the past year, is high school curriculums for character education, suicide awareness, mental health, these kinds of things. And I'm looking at 3. And I just wanted to see, I don't know how many high school level people we have on this meeting, but the 3 I'm looking at are Botman Life Skills, the Overcoming Obstacles program that Steubenville uses, and another program called Sources for Strength, which is a peer, kind of a peer mentoring, peer leadership program to accomplish some of these tasks. Is anybody familiar with any of these, or has ever, some of them are pretty well known. Has anyone tried to implement them at all, or have any thoughts on any of these programs, Botman specifically? Anybody used any of these? That sounds like a no. Well, it's just something, I just thought I'd throw the question out there because I'm trying to decide which of these is most applicable to high school. Thought I'd see if anyone was familiar with them, used them, heard of somebody using them. So just thought I'd throw the question. Yes.
Tell me, spell that. I can't quite get to what you're saying with the first one. How's it spelled?
Botvan, Botvin, Life Skills. They offer curriculums for elementary, middle, and high school for mostly coping strategies, mental health training, social emotional awareness. And I'm just trying to make some decisions before this month is out about which one of those 3 I think is most applicable to our kids. So if no one's used them, that's fine. I just thought I'd throw the question out there real quick.
Justin,
Okay,
Rose sorry, Rose put a link to a resource also in the chat. Sorry, Joe.
Okay, I see it there, the Edmentum program. Okay, that'd be another one that I can look at. I appreciate the help. Thank you.
No, a suggestion that I was going to have Scott and Buddy know this, that we have access from the Snake Network team that we are on for all of the award winners. So we could drill down to which buildings that are high school that got silver awards, because they would be doing solid tier 2 interventions. And we can connect you with those resource names, Justin.
Yeah, man, if you guys had the time to look into that, that'd be super helpful.
Okay. Give me the weekend and I will get that together for you.
No hurry. I appreciate it. Thanks, Jill.
Okay.
I do know, Justin, too, we had a prevention grant that we were working on, and that was one of the programs that ODE, had shared with us.
Was
So,
Botman?
yes,
Okay.
but I'm not aware of anybody that was using it.
Yeah, I'm not super sold on it, to be honest. I'm not sure I really think it's a great fit for our building, but I just thought I appreciate your input. Thought I'd see if anyone had actually used it before. So thank you.
So actually, Buddy, do you think this is a good time to go to those breakouts and
Yeah, because that's what I was thinking. Justin just mentioned, and we were trying to set up breakouts so that we have a high school group, elementary, middle group, and central office group. So I think we would only need the main room and 2 additional groups. So whichever one you would identify with, then just join when Scott assigns a number to them. And then we could have those like conversations, high school to high school, elementary, middle, and then central office folks just at a district perspective. So, and then I was kind of hoping, I know Scott was going to be in one group, I was going to be in one group. And then I had asked Susan Larson to be in a group. Actually, Susan, why don't you if you could go to elementary, middle, and Jill, you could choose whichever one. And then that way we're kind of spread out in the groups. What time you think, Scott, we're looking at?
I don't know, probably, I think 20 minutes, that'll give us time to come back and debrief before, well, actually, no, that's a little bit too long because we still have, let's go.
About 15?
Yeah.
15. Well, and I wrote on a slide, but that's okay. We don't have to share a screen right now. But ideas that I jotted down, and Justin actually hit on one. I wrote down discussing progress and barriers with tier 2 implementation, or maybe you're having some issues with tier 1 implementation that someone can help you with in your group. And then also with some of you guys may or may not be doing some remote learning, some online learning, and maybe you have some questions on maybe in the past or currently how PBIS is working in with some of those things. And then, just some topics to kind of think about, get you started.
Buddy, I'm not sure of the registration, but Megan, who is from Quaker Academies, is asking if there are other online schools in the meeting and where it might be best for her to collaborate.
I would say whatever grade levels she's involved with, because I don't think there's any other online schools with us today.
Okay, and the reason I'm asking is because the way that things are done in a brick and mortar school isn't always how we do things. So this wouldn't be as applicable to just have a typical conversation with a brick and mortar school, I think.
Right, and I agree with you, Megan, that the only thing that I think you might gain from this, or actually, let me just say that you might be a resource because we do have a lot of schools that are going remote or maybe going remote or doing some kind of hybrid that you could be a resource for and how you're doing things, or even if you're just like talking and trying to figure things out together, I think that would be
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
sure. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and open these rooms. You'll see there's high school, elementary, middle, and then if you are at a career center, you can choose to go with the high schools, and then central office will just stay here in the main room. I think that may be everybody. So really what we are kind of, hoping to talk about is, what are you guys doing in your districts, or, Kathy, if you know from different districts what they are doing, or have heard any kind of good things, in order, as far as, their implementation challenges, successes, that kind of stuff. Everybody's quiet today.
Scott, what was your question again?
Let me ask you this: how many of you have district teams that are either forming or are in place within your district? Leadership team. Yes.
You mean just for PBIS?
Well, how does Cambridge do it at this point?
With our PBIS, we're in the process. I really hate to say it, over the years, we've had so many train the trainer trainings, that so many people have sat in on. And unfortunately, several of those people have already left the district, whether they were close to retirement or what it was. Unfortunately, this is something that is brought up constantly. It's in our CCIP, came up so many times in our one needs assessment as far as getting the PBIS out. I had a meeting with Bill yesterday with our, we restructured our DLT, and the way we've done that. PBIS is definitely a part of all of our planning and just everything. But, it seems like getting that team together to be able to have representation from each building, we have found that with this restructuring of our DLT, several of our committees, what they're doing, their focus is a part of that PBIS. And I think at this point in time, it's going to be a total restructure of everything that we're doing. We have buildings that are doing parts and pieces, but as far as that, consistency throughout the district, it's not there. And I know that this is important, and I know that it's something that we really have to do. But at this point, I think we're at a total restructuring of everything and getting it going again, but in a different light. It's going to have to be a complete overhaul of what we're doing.
And sometimes I think that is actually a win versus, as instead of looking at it as a setback, because of the fact that, sometimes things aren't working the way it really needs to work. And so, it's time to just say, okay, scratch all this, let's go back to putting this in place. Jody, I know you guys are working on that as we
I feel Rose's pain. Since the first PBIS Train the Trainer, I don't know how many years ago was that, 5, 6, 7 years. We had several people go to that training. Since that time, we've went through 2, 3 different superintendents. We've had probably 6 or 7 external facilitators for Ohio improvement process. And then a lack of buy-in even from our own previous administrative team that weren't pushing it out. And we've tried for several years to get some momentum even at our district leadership team. And finally, we've got 2 or 3 new administrators in roles here at our district, and things are starting to move. We've got, I think a year and a half ago, we talked about taking pieces of our district leadership team and creating a smaller subgroup for PBIS. And, our union's pretty strong here, and they were bucking some of that as well. I mean, that's been part of our issue is union complaints and concerns and roadblocks. But we have created a PBIS district team now. We've met once. We started the tiered fidelity inventory. We're all going to go back through the PBIS Train the Trainer this year, that team, and we've blocked out a whole day, subs or no subs. I know that's an issue, but we blocked out a whole day in March once we've all went through the training to just sit and plan for the district. So yeah, I'm excited about where this process is going to go. And actually, I'm like the chairman of like 6 different committees, and I've actually stepped back on this one. And our middle school assistant principal, who is really pushing the PBIS at her building, is going to take the lead in this committee. And I'm just so thrilled to be part of something that I won't have to be in charge of. So.
It is always a difficult thing for you alpha females to say, okay, I'm going to let somebody else run this. So, and I will say that in working with Claymont, they run the gambit. They have, a couple schools that have just really have things clicking. And then they have a couple schools that are struggling with putting it in. And I would, I don't think I'm going out on a limb to say that is not unique for Claymont, that that's fairly common at a lot of districts.
Well, and the ones that are just now starting, for the most part, I think are making progress. The progress, again, I forget who said it, 3 years. It might take us 3 years to get there with those teams. And we've got potentially 2 administrators in our district that might be retiring in the next year or 2. So that's unfortunately going to have to maybe start all over again with them. Hopefully their teams are going to be strong enough that they can keep moving forward without an administrator that has this understanding.
I was going to say, it sounds to me like what a blessing you have of somebody that's willing to step up and that has a desire to push this and, create this for your district. That's huge. And I'm still looking for that person. I don't know I don't know, maybe somebody will kind of blossom there or something. But in the meantime, I think as a district, as district administration, we're going to have to be the one to get this kind of the ball rolling on this and look at our DLT to kind of take this on and work at it that way and see what happens. The team that we had before, and I know everybody, it takes a lot of time. And, when you work with your schedules and the contracts and everything, unless there's some kind of financial backing, to have people stay. Normally, it's very tough to get them to commit to one of these groups and try to stay with it and push it through. And it's just difficult. And I know this year, just asking them to do something else like that is, it's difficult. And I mean, we're, really struggling with that. So it's something that needs to be done. So we'll take it on at the DLT level and start there. And hopefully within the next couple of years, we'll have more, people join that. But right now we've got to get it started, at this level.
Well, maybe, and I think Michelle might kill me for suggesting this, but at your DLT, maybe we could visit that and kind of share with you guys some of the struggles we've went through and some of the things that we are doing. And maybe we can even share some of the resources if they're interested.
Yeah, I'd be interested in that. And, even just listening to this today and what Jill shared, to be honest with you, I didn't realize that tiered fidelity the TFI was even out there at this point. This is something that I'm definitely going to share with our DLT. But, I'm kind of like the teachers. I wish something was already completely built. So all we had to do was plug in, exactly what we need. And I think as far as the using that, I think that might be the tool that, we're possibly looking for right now, and getting the right questions out there and eyes on the different things that we need that's going to align with this. So.
And I really liked the workbook that attached to that.
Yeah.
So if you would, complete that tiered fidelity inventory, similar to what, Jill was sharing, where you don't necessarily have to come together right away, and you collect that information, and then you've got your weak points, and then you can go to that workbook and there's your activities already laid out.
Right. I like that.
Your team. I love that.
Yeah.
And
Have
that,
you guys even started, like your matrix, your list of behavioral expectations for your district? Have you done any of that process yet?
Not really. I mean, no, I probably could say no.
Okay.
Yeah. Right now we're in the cohort 2. So we're working on that. One needs is going to be coming out again here real soon. So I know that a lot of that data, I mean, we just know, that PBIS part is going to be part of that, part of our one needs. It's just a given, but this will be good information to be able to help support that. And then to try to help plan of where we are moving forward for the next 3 years. So kind of implementing that inventory to help guide parts of that one needs. So.
and that, again, going back to the stuff that Jill shared, so that Google form that she shared, I think is anybody could use, and once you have your teams in place, that's a good time to go through there and do, what she did with New Philly. It is, so this is the beauty and also the frustration with PBIS is that it is a, individualized framework, so that, giving you a workbook that says do this, or a manual that, like you get with PACS or you get with Leader and Me or whatever you're using, doesn't really work with PBIS, because this is supposed to be just what works for your school. And so even within Cambridge, we know that, what's being done at the elementary school is going to be a little bit different than what's being done at the middle school and what's being done at the high school. So, I wish there was, something I could say, okay, well, here you go, put it in. But, that is a frustration. But again, when it works for your building, then, it's, that it's been done specifically for, you're building your district. And I would, encourage you to take Jody up on her offer and have her and Michelle come in, because believe me, I worked in Cambridge. I was in Cambridge for most of my career, and I'm working with Claymont now in this new capacity, and I can tell you that there's a lot of similarities between them. So, this is a thing that I would take advantage of.
Okay, good.
So the rooms are going to close here in just a few seconds. They're going to start coming back in. Thank you so much for sharing and for this conversation. I think it helps me to get to know where everybody's at, and it also, I think, I'm very excited that you guys got to talk about what will work for you.
Jody, could you send me your email address just through the chat? If you would just send it to me.
Yes, I will do that.
Okay, thank you.
We should be all back to the main room now. I mean, there was good conversation. I was in the high school room. Anything that stood out, anything that you guys want to share? I know we only had 3 breakouts, but I know our conversation was pretty good at the high school level.
One of the things that they talked about, or were able to talk about at the central office meeting that I was in, are things that are real to our area. The fact that we have people being trained who then have either retired or went on to other districts, and so it sets back that planning process, and and the truth is, we have you cannot in our area, we have contracts that can present challenges in themselves in getting people onto certain committees and getting people to work outside of the contract day, and that's a reality, and it's something that it's good to have those conversations as to how you're able to navigate through that and be able to put together teams and be successful with it. So I thought it was a very good conversation.
Hey, buddy, it's Matt from the Coshocton County Career Center. Sorry, and I said buddy because he was in my breakout group. I think one of the important things, Scott, like what you said, we've got to make sure, I'm a positive person. And I think too often with how things are right now and the times in our world around us, we can't focus on things that's outside of our control. We can't focus on COVID. We can't focus on retention rate. We can't focus. I know those are real problems, but if that's what our focus is on, we're going to have a negative impact on students because they can see right through us. We can come and put the dog and pony show, but they're smarter than we give them credit for. So when we were talking in our group, it's just being visible. It's greeting them in hallways. It's asking them how their day's going. We've gotten to the point now, we've had some attendance meetings. We'll have kids come in the morning and I'll say, good morning. And they're like, oh, I'm so tired. I say, hey, I appreciate you being here. Because yeah, you got to fight through those times. Now we're at a career center, so we're a junior, senior school. So we're getting these kids after they come to us after 10 years of their homeschool and whatever they do there. But we're just, and I have a great team around me who reinforces those ideals, I guess would be the word to use. But just being positive and having things in place that focuses on the students and what they're doing to add value to, your institution or the organization you're a part of.
Yeah, I agree. Thanks. And that relationships issue, we kind of got cut off towards the end, but so important. And Scott and I always talk about important acknowledging students, saying good morning. And, you know, people forget sometimes a little comment here or there can really change their day. And I think it's more difficult to see as the students get older. And there was a video that I used to show, or I did, some of you guys probably saw it, from Terrence Scott, that talked about the opportunities to interact with students and how less and less that happens as you go from elementary to middle school to high school. And it's kind of sad that there's so many opportunities to interact with students in the hallways, in the cafeteria, coming in and out of the building that we miss sometimes, that might change things for the positive.
Can I just add something real quick?
Hello, and thank you for joining us. I am Beth Hill.
Sorry.
This is Lindsey Hake. We are glad that you.
Thought I was talking over somebody, and I'll send this to Justin or anybody, but I just wanted to mention that we started a positive office referral form recently here at Monroe Central, and it, I don't know how many people do it, but we have found that it is a fantastic thing. We even have parents posted on social media, when they receive a letter in the mail, because I mail those out, obviously, they're scared to open it up. And when they open it up and they see that it's something good that their student has done, like, it's really made a difference. And with that parent communication aspect of it too, it's been a wonderful thing that we have recently put into place. We started that in November. So I just wanted to mention that. So anything positive is, we try to push that as well here. So.
Good. Yes. Thank you.
So coming up, we're going to take a quick 5-minute break, let you stretch, take care of emails, whatever you need to do for the next 5 minutes. When we come back, we're going to share a presentation from Sims Elementary School, Sycamore Community School District near Cincinnati, or in that region. That is how they built their Tier 2 team. And I know that in our area, we have a lot of people who have some Tier 1 in place and are starting to look into what they're going to do with Tier 2. These are people who have put it into place. And so what we're going to do is show a couple clips from their presentation at the OLAC PBIS showcase in December. And then they will be joining us to answer any questions that you might have as far as, what their process was, what challenges they had faced and, were able to overcome. When I was in on their presentation at the conference, they impressed me very much. I felt like they really had a good plan in place. So we'll take about a 5-minute break. We'll come back and we'll view that video. So be back in about, we'll say, 11:46. All right, well, we're going to come back. We have a short video that is two of our guest speakers from the OLAC PBIS conference. And I'm just going to let them kind of go through the video, let you go through the video, and then when it's over, we will. I know Beth just got here. Hopefully Lindsey's coming in, and we will have and there's. Okay, so we'll go ahead and start this video.
Hello, and thank you for joining us. I am Beth Hill, and this is Lindsey Hake. We are glad that you have decided to learn about building a sustainable Tier 2 team. We work at Sims Elementary in Cincinnati, Ohio, which is a K-4 elementary school. I am the school counselor. I work part-time at Sims Elementary and part-time at another elementary. This is my 8th year in this position. And I am Lindsey Hake, and I am the Reading Intervention Specialist for grades K through 4 at Sims Elementary. All right, so we want you to take just a moment and think about the size of your entire student body. So at Sims, we have around 600 students. So when we think about Tier 2, it's that 15 to 5% of our students. So for us, that means 5% of our students is around 30, and 15% of our students is around 90. So when we think about the capacity and the potential of students being in that Tier 2, we could be servicing at any point in the year, never at one time, between 30 and 90 students. So again, this is the importance of building a sustainable Tier 2 and really developing a strong team to support these students and this volume of students. So take just a moment, think about what this looks like in your building, given the size and population of your school. So 90 kids sounds dauntingly overwhelming. And as you think about how you support that number of students, because you're already supporting them academically, and now you have to create a whole system of Tier 2 behavioral supports to help these students be successful. You really have to think about distribution of workflow, and also how does work group together in a sustainable way so that all of your students can receive the most support possible in a really efficient and effective way. And so on the screen, you can see our hierarchy for our Tier 2 team. It starts with our Tier 2 leadership team, and this is made up of Beth and myself. Beth is our Tier 1 teacher leader, and I am our Tier 2 teacher leader, but it's also made up of our district director of people services and our principal and assistant principal. And so this team is really responsible for setting the direction of the Tier 2 team. Immediately under the leadership team, you have the Tier 2 case manager, which is myself, and that person manages Tier 2 at a systems level. Under that, then, you have your 3 intervention coordinators. You could have more intervention coordinators, but at Sims, we run 3 interventions: check-in, check-out, check-in, connect, and SAG group. And so we have found that it is most helpful to have an individual who can really delve deep into that intervention and become an expert. And so we have a coordinator for each of those 3 interventions. And then immediately under them, we have our facilitators. And these are the individuals who are supporting our students in implementing the behavioral intervention. Finally, we have our data reporter, and this individual is responsible for managing one of our criteria, our referrals. And so as you think about this whole team as a whole, you can really see the distribution of workflow among our team. So as you think about the workflow, we've kind of categorized it into 4 main areas. We have lead, which is the leadership team. And again, those people are setting the direction of our team. They're deciding on the process, and they're also evaluating our work. And then you have that coordination level. And so that's at a systems level by the Tier 2 case manager, and then by your Tier 2 coordinators and your data reporter. And then you have your facilitators who are serving your students. And then that 4th and final row is the students who are receiving the interventions from those facilitators. And so each of these roles really requires a different level of skill sets and a different time investment. And so you can see our best guess on time investments for each of those different people. So as we delve deep into each of these different team members, keep that time frame time commitment into the back of your mind as you consider who do we really envision this position being held by in our school. All right, so as Lindsey mentioned, at the very top of our hierarchy is our Tier 2 leadership team. So some of the qualities and some of the attributes that are important for our tier 2 leadership team to have, most importantly for us, has been administrative representation. We have lots of worker bees and lots of coworkers who are interested and excited about doing this work, but without the support and the buy-in of our administration, we wouldn't be able to make this a school-wide initiative. So that is really, really important. We also have team members through special education teachers or school counselor that have some behavioral knowledge, that really have an understanding of what students need behaviorally, what typical social emotional norms might look like, and how to teach some of those gaps. It's important for your tier 2 leadership team to have a strong understanding of tier 1. We can't attempt to solve all individual tier 1 issues using tier 2 resources. So we have to be aware of tier 1 challenges, tier 1 areas of weakness and places for growth, so that we don't overwhelm and exhaust our tier 2 resources and our tier 2 team. And then lastly, it's important for this team to be goal and data driven. Again, we're looking at tier 2 at a systems level. We're determining what makes the most sense, what's the biggest bang for our buck for our whole school, all of our students in tier 2, and the resources that we pour into our intervention. So not going down any specific individual student rabbit holes, but really looking systemically and globally at our tier 2 team as a whole. So there are lots of jobs of our tier 2 team. We've attempted to lay some of those out for you just as you begin to take some of this good work back to your school. So I'm going to give you just a minute to review the list of responsibilities that our tier 2 leadership team has throughout the year, and then I will briefly explain those in just a moment. So one of the things you'll notice is that our leadership team completes the TFI, or the Tiered Fidelity Inventory, 3 times a year. We do that in the fall, in the winter, and the spring. And based on the results from our fall TFI score, our leadership team develops an action plan. Our goal each year is to grow by 3 points. And we have been able to do this through the guidance of the TFI. So we choose a few areas to focus on, we create an action plan, and that's really our focus for the year. It helps us keep our goals in mind and really focus our energy on improving a few specific areas rather than trying to improve everything all at once. It's helped us feel less overwhelmed with the amount of work we still have to do, but feel really empowered and really proud of the work that we are doing. Another thing that our leadership team does, and mostly this is a past tense thing, is that we created a PBIS handbook, or we call it a toolkit. It has all of our processes, our flow charts, our parent and staff communication in one convenient place. This has been helpful for training our staff, for us locating documents when we need them, and just to streamline this process, this information, and all of the important pieces of paper and communication that are a part of it. The other thing that's really important that our tier 2 leadership team does is we connect with our tier 1 and tier 3 teams. Because each of these teams work both individually but collectively in terms of PBIS and social emotional support for our students at school, it's important to have solid working relationships with the tier 1 team that's working below us to support those school-wide initiatives, but also our tier 3 leadership team, who's really working specifically with some of our most challenging students, really receiving the most individualized intervention. So just collaborating with them from time to time on both school-wide and individual challenges. Finally, the last important role of the leadership team is professional development. And so this team really is the face of our tier 2 teamwork, not only at our building level, but at the district level and with parents. As we explain the good work that our school is doing with our students. And so we really design and then implement the professional learning that various stakeholders need to have. One other thing that we should mention is that as the school counselor, I'm charged with supporting all of our students in a capacity that can be overwhelming at times. So I, in my position, lend themselves best to tier 1 support. where Lindsey is a reading intervention specialist. She's used to working with that 5 to 15% of students who are struggling academically, and now we've added the behavioral piece on top of that. But we also support each other as assistants in our leadership roles at school. So at the tier 1 level, Lindsey is my right-hand man, and at the tier 2 level, I'm her left-hand man. So when you're thinking about building your team, it doesn't have to be a burden of one person, that weight and that responsibility and joy of supporting students can be shared. So think about some of those teacher leaders that you have in your building, and extending them and growing them and bringing others on board. All right, so if you're anything like we were, this all sounds great. And I'm sure you're thinking, well, gee, wouldn't it be nice if we were at Sims and we had this team of people that were eager and willing to do all this work? But we didn't start that way. We actually started with nothing. We had a tier 1 team, and we're told we needed to build a tier 2 team. So we literally went from 0 to team. And we're going to attempt to share with you a little bit about how we got there and what steps we followed to build our team, starting with literally nothing. So when you look at this image, I'm going to refer to this, and I'm also going to refer to our flow chart as we talk about sort of how we built our tier 2 team. So we actually started at the very bottom of our flow chart with a facilitator. Actually, Lindsey was our first appointed check-in, check-out facilitator. So she was the first one to live in that intervention, to do it with students, to engage with teachers, engage just in that intervention, what it felt like. She lived it. We cannot say that enough. She breathed it, she loved it, she fought with it, wrestled with it, and learned it. When she felt comfortable in that position, she was able to grow herself into the check-in, check-out facilitator. Coordinator. She continued facilitating her small group of students, but brought on other check-in, check-out facilitators underneath her. So you can see we're growing in terms of students that we're supporting. We're also growing in terms of staff who are now actively engaging in these tier 2 interventions with students. So your first check-in, check-out facilitator will be the one to grow the highest up the flow chart and ultimately end up as your tier 2 case manager. And so that pick really has to be strategic. So as you grow your team, some of it can happen organically, but that first facilitator pick needs to be very strategic and planned. And we made the right move by picking Lindsey. So as she lived in that coordinator role, managing some facilitators under her, she began to step away from her facilitating role. So she's not checking in and checking out with students anymore. She's kind of growing up that hierarchy. And she becomes a facilitator coordinator. I'm sorry. She becomes a coordinator. So she's overseeing a second intervention. At Sims, we chose for that second intervention to be our STAG group. So Lindsey wasn't ever a STAG group facilitator. She didn't deliver the intervention, but she oversaw it. She brought people on board to teach those skills groups, ensured that they knew what skills needed to be taught, had the resources and the knowledge to be able to do so. And she stayed at a managerial level over now 2 interventions. And I brought Beth in to be our first STAG group facilitator because she filled in my gaps. I am a reading specialist. I am not a school counselor. I had no prior behavior training before beginning check and check out. None of us do. That is a challenge that you are going to face, is that most people who go to college don't come out with an understanding about behavioral intervention. And so especially for when you think about lagging social emotional skills, that was not an area of strength of mine. So being able to tap Beth as my right hand was so helpful because I was able to learn and grow and learn from her expertise in social emotional areas. So as you think about that check in, check out, now we're adding STAG, that is another strategic move because you need interventions that are going to be effective, because you have to have this work to not only have your team buy in, but have your teachers continue to buy in. So having somebody come alongside that original facilitator right now who has strong social emotional skills is going to be important. And then lastly, our final move sort of up the flow chart and up this pyramid are having the administration really finalize and determine your tier 2 case manager. So we were fortunate at our school, we found and we assigned the right person the first time. Lindsey was able to live in an intervention, breathe it, understand it, and grow up and grow her capacity as she moved up in our tier 2 leadership position. It may or may not be that simple for you, and that's okay. It's much more important to find the best fit and the right person than just promote somebody up the hierarchy because they were the first person that you thought of or the first person that you asked. So after you have that tier 2 case manager role filled, there's some other supplementary roles that need to be filled in. Who are going to be other facilitators? Who are going to be other coordinators of these interventions? And then obviously you need to find that data reporter, someone who's going to help manage all of these referrals. Once you have all of those positions assigned, you have your tier 2 team. So it sort of feels like a backwards up approach in terms of your tier 2 team. Often we think of starting with the leader and filling down below, but at Sims and through our learning, we really found it important to know your position and what was below it. And the best way to learn what was below it was by doing it. So at the bottom, you'll see on our slide, we have start small to go big. And hopefully our upside down triangle explanation of this really brings that to life. We started with 1 staff and a few students. And we are growing our capacity still in servicing our tier 2 students, but we've got a team and we're servicing a good number of kiddos at our school. And this process doesn't have to be quick. We walked through this 4-step phase over the course of a year, and we felt like we kind of got lucky with the people we tapped because they were invested. So we were able to move a little bit quicker. But don't feel like after 6 weeks that you're moving up the ladder. Start small and grow your people, and the work will pay off. So we've talked a lot about growing your tier 2 team and the professional learning that they have to do, but we would be negligent if we didn't talk about the professional learning that your whole staff has to walk through. This is a process and your whole staff needs to understand the process so that they know how students are getting identified. They know what the team is doing during that 6-week cycle, and then what support may or may not look like for students as they exit an intervention. Teachers also need to know how to provide effective feedback and how to fill out a student feedback sheet or a DPR, a daily point report, because students are interacting with a variety of adults all throughout the building. And so everybody really needs to be able to support that student. One thing too about doing whole staff professional development is I think if we ask teachers or adults that work in schools about self-rating their ability to give feedback, I think we would all rate ourselves pretty well. So we trained everybody. The refresher never hurts. Hearing how to give specific feedback, specific praise is a good reminder for everyone. So we never assumed that people did or didn't have knowledge. We trained our whole staff. We gave our whole staff an overview of tier 2 and then dug a little deeper with individual staff, cut it on a need to know basis. As kids were entered into intervention, we revisited some of those important topics, brushed up on some of the details of that intervention, but really trained our entire staff on the big system, the big picture of tier 2. The bottom, we have intervention equals instruction. Obviously, we know that to be true for academics, but we just want to remind ourselves and everyone that that is true for behavior. We can't sticker chart these kids into behaving or prize box them into behaving. we really have to teach them. And that's what Tier 2 has taught us. And that's what Tier 2 has encouraged our entire staff to really get on board with. That in order to improve these students' behavior, we have to teach them. And these interventions that we've chosen and that we've implemented have really guided us in making that a part of just how we do things at school. So we just want to thank you for choosing to join us today. Just a quick reminder that all the way back up on slide 2 are my contact information and Lindsey's contact information. Should you have questions, we would be really happy to answer them. We like this a lot, and also learn more about our process and ourselves and Tier 2 by collaborating with others. So no question is a silly one unless you don't ask it. So we encourage you to reach out. If we can be of any help, we would love that and welcome the opportunity to collaborate with you and help you get your team from 0 to team. So we'll be around for some Q&A afterwards, but thank you again for listening and for giving us such great time and attention. Bye-bye.
So little did they know that I would be reaching out to them and taking advantage of that. Lindsey and Beth, appreciate you coming and taking time to join us. What we'd like to do is, what would you like to add that maybe we didn't get to see in this? Because as you can tell, I clipped out some things and just kind of shortened it. But
in terms of adding anything, we communicated back to Scott, Lindsey and I did about really the meat of our presentation, which even though it was 20 some slides, the ones that we identified really are the most important. I think just wanting to highlight as you're kind of sitting there processing it all and thinking through, oh my gosh, I don't know if you have a Tier 2 team or not, you're getting ready to start one. I'm sure lots of you are in different places of implementing and rolling out Tier 2, but we got lucky. And I want you to hear that when we voluntold Lindsey that she was going to be our first check-in, check-out facilitator. She's got amazing leadership qualities. She had interest. She makes time for PBIS because one of the things we did mention that we're hoping will change, but TBD, is that we don't have a schedule ease. We don't receive supplement pay. This is voluntary, to be completely honest. Because we don't have a homeroom of students, our schedules allow a little bit more flexibility, but we Google Meet at 8 o'clock at night to problem solve some of this stuff. And not that that's the expectation, that is something that we've chosen and something that works for us. But really thinking about if your school buys into PBIS, how can you prioritize that? We have some facilitators now that in year 2 of Tier 2 implementation, they have some Tier 2 time in their schedules. For us, that's our special areas teachers, gym, PE, art, music. And then also our gifted teacher has a little chunk of time in her schedule. And so it's the expectation that that is what that time is being used for. Lindsey and I are working on getting some time into our schedules, but like we said, our administration really recognizes this as important work and has taken some steps, giving us maybe 1 duty instead of 2, an AM off or a PM off to do this work and collaborate. So just kind of think about your administration and their level of buy-in and their level of support, and sort of how you can stress that to your building and your staff to get the buy-in from them.
And thank you, Scott, for having Beth and I today. I would also add 2 pieces. One piece being that if this piqued any interest in you and you want to learn more about what do each of these roles do, who is the ideal candidate for these roles, we are happy to share our full 45-minute presentation with you. I put our emails in the chat. If you would email Beth or I, we will get those resources over to you and are happy to then collaborate further. It'll give you a better picture of the whole. But the second piece that I would add is your Tier 1 has to be strong in order for you to move into Tier 2. And it is so tempting because you have those challenging students who need some individualized attention. But if your tier 1 is not strong, you will overwhelm your system and be trying to solve a tier 1 problem with tier 2, and it's not going to work. So before you really move into this tier 2 work, make sure that you have spent the time developing your staff and getting your staff to buy in. That will make your tier 2 work much more successful, because with any new initiative, you have to try to get it close to right relatively quickly, because you don't want to lose your staff. You've got a window of opportunity to show them, this is really cool and I'm going to work this system. And so that would be our other piece of advice to all of you.
So let me ask you on that, how long would you say that it took you to get to from your tier 1 first initial implementation to now we're ready for tier 2?
So we had a year and a half of only tier 1 implementation. We did kind of a soft rollout and then really hit the ground running really hard for a year. Felt comfortable, felt confident. Our common language was very well established, our matrix, our behavioral expectations, some of our school-wide initiatives, assemblies, raffles, things like that. We also then softly rolled out tier 2. So we had some overlap in kind of finalizing tier 1, really getting our footing there. And then with Lindsey starting the first round of tier 2 intervention. So right now we are in year 3. And we have really solid tier 1 and tier 2. And now it's time to start tiptoeing into tier 3. So I would say a solid year for each is reasonable to feel like you're up and running.
Thanks. Other questions that some of the people in the network might have? One of the questions I go ahead, Justin, I'm sorry.
I was just going to, say thanks to Lindsey and Beth for the information. I've talked to Scott and Buddy and some of the other teachers. You know, I'm at the high school level, and tier 2 is something that we're pretty wobbly on right now. And getting the staff trained and coached up is one of my big concerns. So, you know, I saw that Buddy shared your contact information here. So I'm not going to take up a ton of time asking all my specific questions right now, but if you ladies don't mind, I'll probably reach out to you via email with just a couple of questions to get some specifics from you, if that's all right.
Absolutely. We look forward to hearing from you. And if nobody else has any other questions too, we can address them right now, whichever works best for the group.
One of the things, because it kind of came up a little bit early, but when looking at all of the different interventions out there, why did you decide on check-in, check-out, and SAG?
Our school runs 3 interventions. We do check and connect, check and check out, and SAG. And so we launched them in the order of check and check out, then SAG, and then check and connect. And those were the 3 that our district behavior supervisor recommended for us. They're recommended by the state as research-based interventions. And there's a lot of training resources through Iowa, through Midwest, that we were able to use as we built our program. So that's why we started with those 3 interventions. When we look at tier 3, our school does incorporate other ones to make the plans more individualized for the students. But at the tier 2 level, those are the 3 that we are currently implementing.
I would also share that the vast majority, I don't know, Lindsey, at least 80 to 90% of our students are in check in, check out, or the skills group. Check and connect is a much smaller percentage of students that are engaging in that intervention. It's really more of like that adult friend, coach, mentor. But the majority of our tier 2 students kind of fall into one of 2 groups. The first being, I know the rules of school. I know how to play school, but I'm impulsive. My home is a mess. I just can't control myself at school. There's something getting in the way of me meeting the behavioral expectations at school, even though I know them. With an adult one-on-one, I can recite the behavioral expectations. I know the difference between right and wrong or expected and unexpected, but I'm not demonstrating it. Then we had another group of students who, and again, we're in elementary, but we can't assume that all teenagers even truly know and understand how to play school and the expectations. So those students were the most appropriate for joining a skills group where I teach the expectations. We practice. We role play, we watch video clips, we talk through it, we go to the places in our school and we really practice. So once we can be certain, okay, student X knows the expectations, they just need more feedback. They need that constant adult feedback of, thank you for following the expectations, or that front loading of, here's what we're going to do. This is what I expect. So again, in an elementary school, and our philosophy at Sims is we really want to ensure the students know the expectations, which happens through teaching. So those were kind of the reasons why we chose those two interventions, and how looking at the students' needs, almost always they fell into one of those two groups.
But I would add too, Beth, and I have no data to back this up, but I think it kind of does fall into your grade band. And if you, as you look forward to junior high or high school, I would see maybe that check and connect intervention being utilized a little bit more frequently, because those people really need a champion, somebody to look forward to talking to at school. So I do think as you plan your intervention and thinking about which one are we going to launch first, which one are we going to launch second, think about what needs are your students currently displaying and which intervention would best meet their needs. There is no secret in starting with check in, check out, although that's probably the most robust and biggest bang for your buck intervention. But you could start with check and connect if that population of students needed that first. So there is flexibility in the order of interventions that you launch.
It's a great point, Lindsey, about the ages of students and the needs and the diversity of needs across your building. I should have prefaced it by saying in our building, those two interventions were the biggest bang for our buck based on our little people's needs.
And we also have a very large ESOL population. So part of our challenge is we have students coming in who have never been in a school setting like ours before. And so how do we teach them the rules of school so that they can be successful too? So that's something we keep in mind with ZAG.
I was going to ask a question about those groups. Is there a framework or some sort of program that you would use in terms of coming up with lessons for those groups, or is that based on professional development you do with the folks that actually facilitate or conduct the groups?
That is the $1 million question, buddy. I cannot tell you how many people after our presentation for the PBIS showcase asked that. So the simple answer is no, there's not a program, there's not a curriculum, we don't use anything. I will say we've designed our skills groups to look in one of two ways. One type of skills group that we have, we call it the 4 Bs. Those are our behavioral expectations of be respectful, responsible, safe, and be a problem solver. That is reteaching those expectations during that tier 1 time. They've missed it, they didn't get it, they need more. So I reteach those expectations in a greater, deeper way. The other skills group that we have, or that we offer, are lagging skills. So we use a survey, I'm happy to share it with you, that teachers fill out to kind of prioritize and identify, why is this kid not being successful in my class? And those skills are specifically taught, again, by me in the skills group. So honestly, it's a matter of me pulling just resources from all over the place to teach kids impulse control, or teach kids time management skills, or teach kids anger management. So no, there's not a curriculum. We do rely somewhat on Second Step as an opportunity for another one of our elementary schools to use as a tier 1 resource. That isn't something that we use. Unfortunately, I just haven't found anything after lots of looking that really meets our needs the way that tailoring lessons on my own does.
And to Beth's point that there isn't a curriculum, as you think about facilitators, you really need to plan strategically. So if you're thinking about our groups that are really just practicing the rules of school, getting to know our 4Bs, we tap our specials teachers or a regular classroom teacher, somebody who doesn't have a strong social emotional background to kind of teach some of those skills. But when I am planning who is going to be our facilitator, and if this student really has an underlying social emotional lagging skill, I work hard to make sure that I can fit them into Beth's schedule, because she really has the background and the expertise to address that student's need. So you're going to have to keep people's interest and professional knowledge in mind, and also then think about how can you build capacity. Beth is currently coaching up one of our other specials teachers so that she could ultimately take on lagging skills, because that's an interest of hers. But that is something you'll have to keep in mind, because curriculum is a huge barrier, and as Beth said, it is the most common question.
Again, one more piggyback off of Lindsey, the 4Bs, again, our school rules, curriculum, that's hilarious. I've made lesson plans. So I took each of our 4Bs, I made a 2-day lesson on respect, a 2-day lesson on responsibility, safe problem solving. I threw in some video clips and some supplemental activities that a teacher can do. So they're not creating the lessons. They're not, scrambling on Teachers Pay Teachers or Google or YouTube to try to find ideas. It's given to them. That also ensures us that tier 2 intervention of skills group practicing the 4Bs is universal. It's not more robust if you have the music teacher versus having the library teacher. So we know what the curriculum is, we know what they're being taught, what they're practicing, and that came from me. It came from me doing it and practicing it and then writing it down. That's how it was developed.
And that is really our goal for all of our facilitators for check and check out. We give you all of the materials because we want it to be as consistent as possible. Because as you're asking people to take on something else into their schedule, we really have to be cognizant that not only are they devoting their daily time, we have to watch how much we're asking them to plan. So as a leadership team and as a committee, we have worked hard to provide all of the resources to the people who are implementing our interventions.
And to your point, I appreciate, the fact that when you say that there is, you created the lessons, and because the other part to that is, your students, what their needs are, this goes back to that whole part of PBIS where we're culturally responsible, where there's that idea of, okay, you have a lot of ESL students, and so what is required of them versus somebody that maybe is dealing with a lot of let's say
inner city
managed or right.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that, and even though the challenge now is to find a Beth Hill in your district that will create
you're a dime a dozen.
Any other questions or things that you'd like to know from either Beth or Lindsey?
I have a quick question. In those groups, do you just use your lesson plans? Like, is that your documentation, or how do you document that you're doing that in your group?
That's a great question. So for the skills group, we actually have 2 ways that we collect data. So I have just a blank 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 opportunities for students to prove demonstration or mastery of the skill. And as we're practicing it, I just check their understanding. So at the end of my skills group, they have a score out of 5 that we easily convert to a percentage to show their understanding of the skill with me. Then our teachers also have a feedback form where they rate the students through per day on how they're demonstrating that skill in the classroom. So it shows me if the student is able to generalize the information that we've practiced in the skills group into the school setting. If there's a disconnect there, we kind of work through that. But that's where we get our information. We used to just get information from me, which we had kids that were doing wonderfully with me and tanking in the school. So getting that feedback from the teacher is actually something we added this year, which has proven to be really helpful so that we have a full picture of where is that gap? What is happening with this student? Are they not getting it with me? Are they not demonstrating it in the classroom? So we pull data from both the skills group and the classroom or classroom teachers.
Well, I want to thank you for joining us, taking time and joining the network. I think that you're probably going to get contacted by, at least we know Justin's going to get hold of you, but there's probably going to be some others, and we appreciate you taking the time out to join us today, buddy.
Well, that's what I was just going to say. Well, because as an SST, we got to do evaluation and in the certificate of attendance in the chat. But just because people might have to go, but I'm not sure, ladies, how long you guys have, because we can hang out here, and if people still have the time and have some additional questions, then we're not trying to rush folks out unless you guys have prior commitments.
To be totally transparent, I have a 12:30 student that I've kind of been like waiting to knock on my door. I'm happy to set up a small group Q&A kind of thing, or if you guys want to meet and talk and kind of bring back some team questions for us, however you want to do it. When we say we are passionate about this and we are available and accessible, we really mean it. We've responded to several emails following our presentation that we did a few weeks ago. So truly don't hesitate. And if we don't know the answer, we've got great support in our district and in our upper grade buildings. Like Justin, if you want to hear more about our high school, I can connect you to some people there, or our district PBIS kind of leader.
And one compliment I wanted to give, you could probably put a quote in your video on like a plaque or something that kind of resonated with me. Was, I can't remember it exactly, but it was, you can't sticker chart, you can't prize box kids into appropriate behavior, you have to teach them. And like, I think that's got to be somewhere on a plaque. So hopefully Scott and I try to deliver that message to folks, and you hit the nail on the head with that.
I don't think I said it very articulately, so don't quote it until you clean it up a little bit. But you're right. I mean, we've tried it and it hasn't worked.
And Buddy and Scott, I can stay for 10 more minutes if anybody had a question, but if you have a SAG group question, I can help you with logistics, but Beth is your girl in terms of instruction. So if that's your question, send us an email and we will get you the people who can help you with the best answer.
Thanks again, and Beth, thank you for joining us, and hopefully your student isn't bouncing off the walls right now waiting on you. So
the opposite, indeed. I'm sure he's sitting solemnly in a chair.
Okay.
All right, thank you guys. Have a great rest of your week.
Let me very quickly, just again, I'm going to put that contact information up, and you see their emails. Which sometimes that's the best way of finding out information, so that, you know, I think a lot of times we hold off and then don't want to really speak up at a network or among other people, but they may have questions for you individually.
And if you dropped your email in the chat, I've been copying and pasting them over, so we will get those resources to you likely this evening. It is map testing day at Sims Elementary with lots of technology problems. So we are problem solving left and right around here.
We just had a couple slides, I guess, from our end, and we're running into time. I know people have to go. So the next slide, Scott, just sort of reminds everybody what we have coming down the pike here. in terms of tier 1, train the trainer, the next leader network, and a tier 2 training in May. So we'll cover check-in, check-out, SAG groups, and check and connect with that. And then we always do a 3-day train the trainer in June. So in case anyone had to log off, but if Lindsey was still on here, then if anyone continued to have questions, then by all means unmute and ask.
Well, again, we want to thank you for attending. We know that it's, you know, a busy time of the year, and you know, taking your time out. We hope that you know, you got some useful information. You know, we know that Jill gave us a lot of good stuff, and then you know, Lindsey and Beth, I think, were very informative. So again, I want to thank you guys for joining us. Buddy, what you got?
Not much else. I know we were probably going to get into talking about the PBI showcase and different things. We actually, I'm glad that we went to 12:30 because we had some good speakers and sharing today. So we'll follow up on that maybe at the next network. So thank you all.
Enjoy the rest of your day.